Hello there YouTube, Amsoil Adam here. In today's video, we're going to be doing an oil change on this 2012 Chevy Equinox. So the first thing is, people need to know what kind of filter and what kind of oil that they need in their car. So the easiest way to do that, get online, go to extremebikes.myamsoil.com. That is my Amsoil website. Scroll down a little bit, and here you can see you can find products for many different vehicles, whether it's your car, motorcycle, truck. So we're doing auto and light truck. Gonna pick 2012 Chevrolet. Well, I guess they're classifying it as a truck. So we'll go back to the Chevrolet. We'll call it a Chevrolet truck. Equinox. Then it's going to ask for your engine code. And this one happens to be the 2.4 liter four-cylinder. Now you see there are two different 2.4 liter four-cylinders. Both have a K engine code. So they should both have the same filter. Once you put that information in, click Find Products. And then Amsoil will show you all of the products that they recommend for your vehicle. It's also going to give you the capacities, filter recommendations, air filters if they're available, coolant, so on and so forth. All right, so it's saying that in the Signature Series, we need the 5W30, which is Amsoil's ASL, 25,000 mile engine oil, which we have sitting right there, 2 cases of it. Filter is the EA15K03. EA15K03. So we have everything we need to do the service. So we're going to go ahead and get started. As you can see, I've already got the car jacked up, supported by jack stands. And I've got the basic tools laid out that I'm going to need. A ratchet with a 15mm socket. I've also got this large socket here to get the oil filter cap off. It is a 32mm. Now I only had that in a 1/2-inch drive. Not that you need a 1/2-inch drive on something like this, but it's what we've got. You'll see I have a universal joint put in here to allow me to swivel because of the orientation it is on the vehicle. It's kind of tucked down in there underneath, right there. A little tricky to get. First thing we're gonna do is crawl underneath the car and remove the oil pan drain bolt, which is right here. Try to get my oil pan positioned where I think the oil is going to go, and hopefully I'm right and don't make a huge mess. Now what I do when I take these bolts out, I keep some positive pressure. I'm pushing towards the front of the vehicle. Keep some pressure on the threads until you know that that bolt is completely out. And then when you pull it, you make very little mess. Obviously a little bit, but it all goes where it needs to go. All right, while that's running out, go ahead and come back out from underneath the car. And I am bringing the oil drain plug with me so that I can clean it in a few minutes. So now we're going to take the filter removal tool and undo the filter housing cap. Now this may be tricky to do, getting it on there and keeping the camera in view, but now that it's on, we're just going to loosen that up. Sorry guys, I had to cut there for a moment. I got into a position where as that oil cap was coming out, as it threaded out, it had wedged the socket up against the bottom of the exhaust manifold, and it took a little bit of doing to get it undone. But now, just reach in there, pull the cap, the filter should come with it, and all the oil that's in that bowl should drain down to the engine and out into the pan. Back over at the bench, we're going to replace the element. So we're just going to pull the old filter out, set the phone down. It's very difficult to do with one hand. Hope I can do this, we can still see it. Just pops out. Now you notice that there's an O-ring around here, and Amsoil has provided a new O-ring with the new oil filter. So I'm taking my pick tool, reach in there and just pull this O-ring off and discard it. Now I'm going to clean this cap real quick before I install the new filter. From the dirty rag and pan to a clean paper towel so that we don't get any contaminants in. Now I like to lubricate O-rings before I install them, so I always keep Thing petroleum jelly in my shop. Just a little bit on your fingers, wipe it around on the O-ring, try to cover the whole thing. This will lessen the risk of damaging the O-ring during installation. Again, can't do this with one hand. The O-ring is installed. You'll see that there's also another small O-ring on the tip of the oil filter housing. So now we're just going to set the oil filter housing back into the cap, pop it into place. Pretty quick and easy. And now we'll take it back over to the car and reinstall. I'm just starting this by hand. This should not take any force. It should spin it nice and easy. If you have to put a wrench on it before it seats, you've probably got it in crooked, causing that much resistance. So now that it's down in there, I'm just gonna put the tool back on and snug it up. In there, basically just drive it down until it seats and then just a little snug. The tension on the cap is not what seals it. The O-ring is what's going to seal it, so it doesn't have to be mega tight. These plastic caps, if you over tighten them, then the next time you're going to take them out, it's a good chance you might break them around off the corners. I also want to mention that I did change up the tool a little bit. It turns out I used an adapter to go down to 3/8 because the skinnier extension was a little bit easier to weasel between the spaces down there. But that worked. Okay, so now we've cleaned up the drain plug, and as you'll see, there's a rubber seal underneath the head of the plug, and it's reusable. There's no need to replace it, and there's no reason that you would have to use any thread seal on the threads, but I tend to be a little bit OCD, and you're not going to hurt it, so I put a dab on the threads just as extra security. Like I said, probably don't need it, but not only will this help seal the thread some, it is also going to make it less likely to vibrate out if for some reason it should work its way loose. So now we're going to climb back underneath the car to reinstall it. Before I reinstall, I like to just wipe the mating surface clean real quick. There's almost no oil dripping out now. Again, installing by hand. Never use tools to start your fasteners. That's how you break things. Change the direction of rotation. Snug that down. Doesn't have to be mega tight. So now we're done under the car. We've changed the filter. We've put the plug back in. Gonna pull my oil pan out. So that I can now lower the car back down. So I'm going to take the weight off of the jack stands. Pull the stands back out. And then lower the car back down so that it's level. At this point, all we have to do is refill it with oil. So we'll go back to our capacities list. All right, it shows here the capacity with the filter is going to be 5 quarts. So I'll start by putting about 4.5 in there and see where that gets us, just to make sure we don't overfill. I want to point something out here. Got my oil all out and ready to go. And look there where the fill cap is. You see that dirt debris around the edge? You don't want that falling inside the engine when you go to open the cap. So just take some compressed air. Clean the area off. The cap is off, and I've acquired a funnel that I cleaned so that there's no contaminants in the funnel that end up in the engine. And at this point, we just pour the oil in. I usually drop it, let it sit there for a few moments. So we have our 5 quarts here. For the sake of video, I'm not going to let them sit there and drain as long as I normally do. That's quart number 3. Quart number 4. And here's number 5, but we're only going to pour it about halfway. I went a little over half. At this point, we'll cap it off. We're going to run it, let it run for 30 seconds to a minute. Make sure that the oil pressure fills the oil filter cavity completely, pressurizes the whole oil, and we're going to get a little bit of warmth in there as well. And then we'll shut the car off. And we'll double check the level to make sure we did it right. Most likely we'll have to add a little bit more, but it's better to do it in stages so that you don't overfill. It's a lot more difficult to get a little bit of oil out than it is to top off a little bit more out of the bottle. So all the oil is put in. The oil drain cap is, the oil fill cap is reinstalled. So we're going to go start the car. Now, one thing you want to take note of on the inside is if you have an oil gauge or an oil pressure light, you want to pay attention to those. So here's the oil pressure light right there. There is no oil pressure gauge. You just want to make sure that after you start the car, that light goes out in a reasonable amount of time. See, the light is on. Usually if it takes more than 7 to 10 seconds, there it goes, it went out. So now you know you've built oil pressure and everything is good. So while it's running, I get back out of the vehicle. We're just going to take a quick look, make sure that nothing's leaking. Make sure there isn't any oil squirting out from down there. Look underneath the car, make sure there's no oil pouring out anywhere. And everything looks pretty good. So at this point, we can turn the car off and double check the oil level. So I wiped the stick clean and then I reinserted it, and you can see here, we're just about a quarter of the way up into the safe zone. So we definitely need to add the remainder of that quart. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. So we got the rest of that quart drained in there, and double check the oil level on the dipstick again. And it is still reading just a tiny bit low, guys. But then something occurred to me is the way the car is sitting in my shop, the back tires are off of the concrete pad into the gravel. Therefore, it's sitting back a little bit, and the dipstick goes into the very front of the engine. So the way it's pitched, more of the oil is running towards the rear of the pan. It's well within the safe zone, so we'll wait till we get it on flat ground and double check it again. So that's probably going to conclude the oil change on the 2012 Equinox. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you.